Welcome back to my channel. This is Tony Winston, Jazz Piano College. And I'm going to look at the modes today. And the way they're usually presented is like, say in C major, the Ionian mode, which is just the C major scale. The Dorian, which just starts on the second degree. Phrygian. This is the way they're usually presented. And when you look at it this way, you kind of start thinking, what's the point of this? They're all just C major scale. And honestly, I don't think the great improvisers of the past thought much about modes, and I'll explain why you don't need to think about the modes very much either. However, it is useful. Certainly some of them are pretty useful to know and to practice and to understand. All of them are really, but I don't think you have to think modally in order to get the value from these scales. So let me present it a different way. Every scale now will start on C, and I'll show you the 7 different modes, and then we'll talk about them and where they're most commonly used and where, the ones that you're going to use more often than the others. So C major Ionian. Now we're going to go C Dorian. Okay, this is typically on a minor chord. And where does the scale come from? It's the B flat major scale. Just starting on a C and ending on a C. Now I'm going to do Phrygian. All right, and typically that could also be used on a C minor chord, especially if you're in the key of A flat, because that's where that scale comes from. You see, you got these 2 black keys and these 2, so that's C Phrygian. Next will be a C Lydian, and that comes from the G major scale. That's why you only have that 1 sharp in there. Next will be Mixolydian, and that comes from the F major scale, typically used over a C dominant chord. Because where does C dominant go usually? F. So that's why you would tend to want to use it there. Next one will be Aeolian. That comes from the E flat major scale. Locrian, which comes from the D flat major scale. Typically used if you're using, say, a C minor 7 flat 5. All right, and then we're back to that's all of them. So back to the Ionian. Now, an interesting thing, if you look at the scale, you've got a whole step, a whole step, a half step, a whole step, a whole step, whole step, half step. And that's how I went down, by a whole step, then a half step, then a whole step, a whole step, a whole step, and a half step. And I came up with all those modes. Now, how to practice them and how to think about them when you're soloing or improvising or trying to compose a melody or something like that. So we'll start with the Ionian, pretty basic. It's the major scale. I don't think you're going to want to think about it as the Ionian scale. Just think about the major scale, if we're in the key of C. And by the way, now I'm going to play a 1, 6, 4, 5, kind of like heart and soul. So I'm playing the Ionian scale, major scale. And believe it or not, I just played the Ionian, the Aeolian, the Lydian, and the Mixolydian scales for each one of those chords. For C, I played Ionian. For A minor, I played Aeolian. For F major, I played Lydian. There's the Lydian note right there. And for G, I played Mixolydian because of that note. But did I have to think about those modes? No, because I'm just playing C major scale. And so most of the time, the modes just fit into the key that you're playing in, and you don't really have to think about them. If you're doing, say, a 3, 6, 2, 5, 1 in the key of C, I'll just keep this all in root position to make it easy, and I just play the C major scale, Phrygian, Aeolian, Dorian, and Mixolydian. I had to think just to say them out loud because normally I wouldn't do that. And if I was playing in the key of A flat, I could do the same thing. Just think of the A flat major scale. Now you're going to say, well, that doesn't sound like jazz. That sounds like somebody just starting off, maybe. And you're right. Usually in jazz or rock or pop or Broadway songs, you don't that often have all these scale tone chords, chords that naturally occur in the key. You might have an A dominant seventh. You might have a D dominant seventh, and you'll want to use some different scales for that. And actually, the best scales to use are not usually, many times, are not really even part of the major scale. They're part of the diminished scale or some modes of the minor melodic scale, which we're not going to get into today. But like I have said previously, I have many playlists. You can look in the description, and if you're interested in these scales, go to the playlist of scales, and there's many, many videos about how to use these different scales. In fact, I recently did a video about the diminished scale that is looking to be one of my best videos ever, so check that one out. Now, I'm not trying to convince you to never think about the modes because they are important. Songs don't just go 3, 6, 2, 5, 1. They have many other chords a lot of times, chords that are sometimes not related to the key that you started off in. And in those cases, it helps to know which mode is going to be appropriate. So if you have, say, a minor seventh chord, all right, now, I don't know what key I'm in right now. I'm just playing a minor seventh chord. The most common scale to play is the Dorian mode. And all that is a minor scale. It's got the flat 7 in, right, to match the chord. And it's got a D right there, okay, which is the 6th. Aeolian is almost the same. And Phrygian is the other choice. Now, if the chord is a 2 chord in a song, like if I'm in the key of E flat, the 2 chord is F minor, then almost always it's going to be Dorian mode is your best choice. And you're just trying to fit a scale to the chord. Doesn't mean you can't use some other notes, like put some passing tones in between, or maybe use a combination of both scales. But your most common choice is probably going to be the Dorian. And if you want to practice this, take minor seventh chords. And if it helps you to think about where it comes from, which is the 2nd degree of an E flat major scale. Yeah, so if you don't know all your major scales, that's where you need to start. Don't worry about the modes until you know every major scale really well. For a period of time. I mean, you need to know it and absorb it and live with it. But here is the Dorian mode. And, we can do this in any key. Let's do it in C minor. And we'll go around the cycle of fifths to B flat next, if you don't understand the cycle of fifths. I'm sure Rick Beato's got a video about it, and I do too, of course. All right, so it's a good way to practice them. If you're a little more advanced, you could do you want to go up and down. You could also do rootless voicings with the left hand. If you understand those, but chances are if you know rootless voicings, you already know about the modes. So Let's just do the regular chords here. Okay. The next one, Phrygian. All right, Phrygian, you almost never really have to think about Phrygian mode, unless it's a song that says something like E Phrygian. And of course, the E Phrygian is the C major scale. It's a scale built from the third degree of a major scale. All right, and you do something like that chord. Gives you that Phrygian sound. It's a cool sound, there's no doubt about it. And if you're trying to write music that, has that kind of flavor to it, Phrygian is a great choice. The next one is Lydian. Okay, this is usually used if you're playing a major seventh chord, any major seventh chord other than the key that you're in. So if you're in the key of C, and all of a sudden you have an F major seventh chord, that note is the Lydian note because F major has a flat. So you get rid of that. So it's a sharp 4. And that's really how you have to think about this scale too. You don't really think about the fact that this is a C major scale that's just starting on F. You just think about a major scale on F, but don't play the regular 4. Play the sharp 4. It's only that one little change. All right, and just to demonstrate its usefulness, D flat major, Lydian. C has that G in it, and if you're in the key of C, and you get that D flat chord, the fact that it has this Lydian note, it's a common tone to the C major scale, so it helps keep these chords sounding connected. All right, it could work on a lot of other chords too. That's the Lydian note. See, makes them sound like they go together. If you use just regular A flat major scale, it works. I mean, I know how to make it work, but yeah, it sounds good. And like I say, these are not rules. Like you have to use the Lydian scale on a major seventh chord that's not in the key of the song. These are just typical ways that it gets used. Even Happy Birthday has a Lydian mode. All right, and it's also a very kind of emotional sound. Anytime in the movie, I can almost guarantee you, if they want you to cry in a movie, it'll be, I'm going to use the Lydian mode here, and I'll check this out. So. I know you're feeling pretty sad right now, but hang on. It just sounds so wistful. So that's another great way of using the Lydian scale, Lydian mode. Mixolydian, all you're doing is fitting a scale to the chord. If you've got a C seventh chord, there's just no way you're going to want to play B unless it's as a passing tone or something like that. So, and where is this scale going? To F. So you're actually playing an F major scale. Right, has that one flat, but don't think of it as an F major scale. You can actually, since you're going to F. So, if you, as long as that's where that dominant chord is going. But it's just as easy to just think about flatting the seventh, and if you don't know where that is, just look at your chord. There it is, right there. All right, Aeolian. It's built on the 6th degree of the scale. So if you're in the key of C and you're playing, right there I did Aeolian mode. So you don't have to think of it in that case. If you have a song that's in A minor, You know, it's that flat 6 that gives it its characteristic sound. So it's a very useful scale, you know, if you're in that particular key. And it's called the natural minor, you know, or the relative minor if you're in the key of C. A minor is the relative minor, you have the same key signature, and that's the natural minor scale because it has no sharps or flats, same key signature. Harmonic minor has that in it, but that's beyond, that's not a mode of the major scale, so we're not going to talk about that today. Locrian mode is probably the one I think you really do have to think about if you're playing a minor 7 flat 5 chord. All right, and we always like, what the heck do we play over a minor 7 flat 5 chord? Just think from the root, think up a half step and play the major scale. And I'll use it in context here. I'm going to do, let's see, what shall I do? I'll do a 2, 5, 1 in A minor. And the 2 will be B minor 7 flat 5. And I'm thinking up a whole step, a half step, to C major. All right, so here we go, starting on A minor. And right here, you know, I was thinking, I don't know what I was thinking, thinking Mixolydian or something, but and there I used A minor, A harmonic minor, because that's where I was going from the E minor. But like I said, that's not part of this video. This is about the modes. So that's typically where you use the Locrian mode. It can also just give you a sound of Locrian, like if you played something like... very similar to Phrygian. Locrian would be basically the same thing with a different bass note. So it's a very, very typical or very similar kind of sound to the Phrygian, though not exactly, because the Locrian has a flat 5, whereas Phrygian has the regular 5. All right. Well, that's it for today, everybody. Thanks so much. I've got lots of links down in the description if you want to explore this stuff a little bit further or support the channel. There's a couple ways you can do that through Patreon or PayPal, and I really do appreciate it. Thanks so much, everyone. See you again real soon.